The Zarth Dominion had ruled the stars for 10,000 years through one simple principle: fear. Entire worlds bowed before their crimson banners, entire species paid tribute to their emperor, and no one dared to resist. When the Zarth fleets arrived, civilization surrendered before the first shot was fired. Fear had built their empire. Fear had kept it alive until one day, they took the wrong human child. It was supposed to be a routine abduction, an act of control. A mining colony on the edge of Terran space had missed its tribute by 3 cycles. The Dominion sent a cruiser to remind them of their place. They killed the governor, burned the comm station, and took hostages to ensure future compliance. Among those taken was a 7-year-old girl named Amelia Clark. To the Zarth, she was just a bargaining chip. To humanity, she became the spark that lit the stars on fire. For the first few weeks, the Zarth barely noticed her. A child was a child. They didn't understand why humans valued individuals so much, especially their young. But when a Dominion ambassador sent his usual demand to Earth, expecting fear and apologies, the message that came back was not what he expected. It was a single line, transmitted from every Terran relay simultaneously: bring her back, or burn. At first, the Zarth laughed. They had crushed empires greater than humanity's fledgling reach. They had enslaved species who could split moons. To them, Earth was a backwater, barely crawling out of its gravity well a century ago. The laughter stopped when human fleets began to move. The Dominion was accustomed to wars of submission, quick, decisive strikes that ended before they began. But humans didn't fight that way. They didn't beg. They didn't surrender. They hunted. Every human fleet that vanished into hyperspace reappeared behind enemy lines, cutting supply routes, annihilating communication hubs, and disappearing again before retaliation came. The Zarth were used to order. Humanity brought chaos. When the Dominion destroyed one Terran fleet at the Battle of Karen Gate, they thought victory was near. Then, 2 days later, a Zarth breeding moon went dark. No explosion, no warning, just silence. When scouts finally arrived, they found nothing left but molten glass and a human flag fluttering from a melted spire. The message beneath it read, "You took one child. We're taking them all back." Every colony that had once lived under Zarth rule began to rise. Inspired by human defiance, alien species long broken by fear began to fight again. The humans didn't just free their own, they armed everyone. The Zarth's empire of terror fractured, not from the outside, but from within. In the war's 4th year, the Dominion captured a Terran officer named Admiral Reyes. When questioned, he only said one thing before being executed: "You don't understand. We're not fighting for conquest. We're fighting for one little girl." The interrogators didn't realize he meant it literally, because while humanity burned half the Dominion's empire to the ground, a single covert ship, Erebus, slipped through the chaos. Its mission wasn't conquest. It was rescue. Deep within the Zarth capital's dungeons, Amelia Clark was still alive when Erebus breached orbit. It didn't send a warning. It didn't ask permission. It simply opened fire. The Zarth homeworld's defenses shattered under precision strikes. The Dominion fleet, scattered across the galaxy, couldn't return in time. As their cities fell and their communication grids collapsed, a small extraction team made its way into the Emperor's palace. The guards who tried to stop them didn't stand a chance. Humanity had learned to fight monsters, and in doing so, had become something the monsters feared. When they found Amelia, she was older, hardened, but alive. Her first words were simple: "Are we going home?" The soldier leading her out smiled. "Yeah, kid. But first, we have to finish something." That same day, the Zarth Emperor broadcast his surrender plea to every world under his rule. But humanity didn't respond. Instead, orbital feeds captured a final transmission from the Terran fleet above the Zarth capital: "This is for every world you broke. For every child you stole. For Amelia. The bombardment that followed ended 10 millennia of tyranny in 12 minutes. When the dust settled, humanity didn't claim the empire. They gave it away to the free species who had risen beside them. Earth took nothing but silence and a single ship returning home, carrying one very tired child staring out at the stars. Historians later called it the War for One. The Zarth called it the end. But among humans, the story became legend. Not because of victory or vengeance, but because of what it proved, that humanity's wrath was terrifying, but their love was even stronger. And on quiet nights, across countless liberated worlds, when children asked why no one ever tried to rule through fear again, parents would whisper the same answer: because once, the Zarth took the wrong human child. In the aftermath of the Zarth Dominion's fall, the galaxy trembled, not from fear, but from disbelief. An empire that had endured 10,000 years had been erased by a species barely a few centuries into the stars. No one could understand how humanity had done it. No superweapons, no vast armadas, just relentless will, raw fury, and a promise to a single child. The liberated world sent emissaries to Earth, seeking the secret behind such power. But the humans gave no great speeches, no divine explanations. When asked how they had shattered the unbreakable, a Terran general merely said, "We remembered who we were fighting for." Those words spread faster than any weapon. The galaxy began to change in ways no one predicted. The former slaves of the Dominion started building their own councils, their own defense fleets. Humanity helped them, not as rulers, but as equals. They rebuilt cities the Zarth had burned centuries ago and taught worlds how to stand without chains. For the first time in millennia, there was peace without oppression, but peace for humanity was never quiet. The war had left scars deeper than metal and fire. The soldiers who returned carried ghosts in their eyes. They had seen what fear could do to a galaxy, and none wanted to see it again. Many retired to remote colonies, building quiet lives among the stars they had saved. Amelia Clark became a symbol. She was no longer the frightened child in chains, but the living proof that one life could reshape history. When she grew older, she refused fame, titles, or wealth. Instead, she joined the Terran diplomatic corps, traveling to the same worlds once enslaved by the Zarth, speaking not of vengeance, but of unity. On the anniversary of the Dominion's fall, she stood before the new Galactic Council, a gathering of hundreds of species once ruled by fear, and said, "I was taken because I was small." Humanity fought because they refused to believe anyone could be small. Her words were immortalized on every liberated world. Still, not everyone believed the war was truly over. Deep in the shadows of collapsed space, remnants of the Zarth fleet survived. They whispered of vengeance, of rebuilding, of reclaiming their lost throne. But every time one of their hidden ships tried to rise, it vanished into silence. Rumor said the humans had sent a special division, the Silent Wing, to hunt what was left of the Dominion. None of their targets were ever heard from again. As decades passed, the name Zarth became a curse word, a reminder of what happens when fear rules. Children learned in schools not of the Emperor's conquests, but of the night he knelt before humanity's fire. Museums displayed the melted remnants of his palace, and under glass sat the small metal bracelet Amelia wore during her captivity, a relic that had launched 1,000 fleets. But legends, once born, never truly sleep. 100 years later, explorers on the edge of known space stumbled upon something vast, an artificial world, dark and silent. When they entered, they found data archives filled with recordings of the Zarth Emperor's final days. The last entry was a trembling voice: "They do not rule through fear. They rule through love. That is why they are unstoppable." The galaxy changed after that discovery. Alliances once held by treaties were now bound by shared understanding. Humanity had proven that compassion could be as mighty as war. Yet even in peace, they kept their fleets, not as conquerors, but as guardians. Whenever tyranny began to rise, the shadow of Earth's wrath was enough to stop it. The descendants of Amelia Clark grew into a line of explorers, diplomats, and warriors. They carried her name like a flame. One of them, Captain Jonas Clark would later say in a speech to the new colonies, "The stars remember what fear looks like. It's up to us to remind them what hope feels like." Among the stars, statues of humans stood beside monuments to alien heroes. The old hatreds dissolved, replaced by something stronger, a shared vow that no empire built on fear would ever rise again. Every world had their own myths of the war, but they all ended the same way: a human child, rescued from the heart of darkness, smiling beneath a sky that finally belonged to everyone. In the centuries that followed, stories of the Zarth became ghost tales told to frighten the arrogant. Admirals spoke of the human doctrine, not as a strategy, but as a moral code: never strike first, never yield, and never forget why you fight. The galaxy had learned that humanity's fury was not born of cruelty, but of love pushed too far, and somewhere, beyond the rim, on a quiet world surrounded by fields of silver grass, an old woman named Amelia Clark lived her final days. She never spoke of the war, but every night, she sat on her porch and watched the stars. When she died, her heartbeat stopped beneath a sky filled with ships from 100 worlds, each arriving to honor the girl whose kidnapping had rewritten destiny. They buried her under a single stone that bore no title, no epitaph, only one phrase: she was loved. From that day forward, humanity's fleets carried an unspoken creed. When new civilizations met them, they did not fear the Terran banners, they saluted them. Because everyone in the galaxy knew what the colors of blue and silver meant. They meant protection. They meant defiance. They meant that even in the coldest reaches of space, there was a species that would burn down an empire for one child. And so, when future tyrants whispered plans in secret, they would glance nervously at the stars and remember the story told across generations, the story that ended an age of fear because once, long ago, the mighty Zarth Dominion made a single mistake: they took the wrong human child.